Hi everyone, Gareth here from WhatCulture Wrestling, joined by the fantastic group, the impressive, honoured to be joined by this group of incredible developers here for WWE 2k23, and we're going to talk all things 2k23 today because there's a lot to get into because we've got so many new features, and this game feels like it's really upped the level that was already raised, let's be honest, with last year, because it was a huge, we won't say an improvement, but it was one of those things where it really captured the imaginations of much of the wrestling fan base and got a lot of people just locked straight into this game thinking, wow, I can't wait for what comes next. And now we have it. So just to get the ball rolling, really, and I don't mind who wants to take the question first, but we really want to know what's the feature that maybe you're most proud of, the one that you're most excited for fans to kind of get to grips with this year. It could be something that's kind of built on something that was introduced last year, or just something that's been completely brand new, like brought into the game this year.
It's funny that you say that. I would say it's a little bit of both, right? It's War Games, right? War Games is the biggest addition to WWE 2k23. But in order for us to even think about adding War Games, we had to prototype it in, pun intended, prototype it in WWE 2k22. And I'll let Derek explain it, but like with the approach that we took to like including that one little boxed area backstage kind of allowed us to think about like, how would we handle navigation without ropes, without, you know, the ring being placed in a specific location that was hard coded. Like, how do you figure out climbing when it's just like a surface rather than this thing needs to be here at the exact spot? It was really hard for us to do anything and think outside of the box in previous years, and allowing our designers to have that kind of freedom in WWE 2K22 with what we did with Backstage Brawl allowed us to do War Games, and Derek can explain further.
Yeah, I mean, having two rings at all kind of threw every assumption the game's been built on for decades out the window, right? So during 2K22, as Lionel said, we kind of had our eye on the ball and knew War Games is the direction we want to be going. And try and set ourselves up for success for 23. And we had to kind of try and knock it out of the park as far as that goes, because if War Games was half-baked, it would be the buggiest thing you could imagine, right? It was something we had to get in working early and just pretty much spend so much of our year on making sure War Games was a tight experience. And I'm really happy with where it ended up. Having the actual entrances happen during gameplay as people are released from the cages, having some of the crazy spots like the springboarding from one ring and bouncing across both ropes into the other. Even something like the area between the rings that we called the trench, having it so you can actually fight inside that space. It's a really cramped area and required us to, I mean, not only design combat in a different way, but come up with creative ways to even mocap. We don't have two rings at motion capture. We had to, use platforms and an extra set of ropes to kind of simulate that area and kind of reimagine what space that we're in to capture those motions.
And it's super effective because you feel just how interactive the entire, like you feel like you can literally any point in that ring, like you said, you got the trench there in the middle, you just feel like there's something to be done. It's just that it makes every single time that you step into War Games feel unique, feel fresh. Like you could literally play about 4 or 5 War Games matches in a row and they'd all be completely different depending on what weapons are brought in, who jumps off a cell at what point. It's, it shows, do you know what I mean? It shows a lot of care and attention being put into it, and it will definitely not go missed this year. But like kind of stemming on the back of that, like there's a lot of kind of, I jumped straight into War Games. That was my first thing I did when I got this game, because I thought, well, that's it seems like a flagship feature. So I thought, right, let's dive straight into it. And I chose a couple of kind of my favorite wrestlers. I think I had like Seth Rollins in there, AJ Styles, a few people. And I had Cody in as well, because I'm a Cody guy. Like I'm a Cody guy, I love my Cody. And it was just awesome seeing those kind of finishers and everything else going down within those 2 gauges. It's just a very surreal sight for a video game at this point. So I'm just kind of, it's the general thing to open up. What was your favorite kind of finisher, kind of new moveset type thing that you've introduced into this game? What was your favorite one to design, maybe, or mocap? What kind of I don't know, maybe some stories from the mocap sessions when it comes to those different finishes and things like that? That'd be really interesting. I
mean, speaking of the trench, it provided a lot of unique opportunities for us, right? We have moves that utilize the ropes, but almost all of them require you to lean somebody against the ropes to start the move. But because characters in the trench, we know exactly how far they are from ropes on either side, we were able to implement moves that kind of spontaneously use the ropes. There are some cool heavy attacks that involve a springing knee or a chop that isn't just a standard chop, but you actually lean the opponent up against the ropes before hitting them with the chop or sending them over the ropes. And those are really fun to capture, and I think they translated the game really well. And also, I mean, the double springboard that I mentioned, that was a lot of back and forth figuring out how can we get this in? How do we capture a double springboard with only one set of ropes? It involves some, wooden platforms and kind of shooting it in two different ways to stitch it together. And then the decision also to actually support the existing springboard moves as the double springboards in the game. Sometimes when we add a new feature or a cool high spot, by virtue of our old data not working with it, we have to capture something that's kind of bespoke. But any chance that we get to let you carry your existing moveset into a new context is something I always really try and go for. And I was really happy we were able to accomplish that with the springboards this year.
Yeah, it's again, I'm quite a kind of springboard fanatic with it. With any wrestler I get in this game, when I do create my own wrestlers, I tend to be a high flyer. So anytime I can throw myself off a rope, do a backflip, something like that, I'm sold. But something I was noticing as well, obviously, with this year, you've got a very specific lineup of wrestlers that are going to be introduced throughout the season pass this year. And I'd just love to know what the mindset was when it comes to deciding on which wrestlers are going to pop up throughout the year. Do you know what I mean? Different kind of packages, because I think I've seen the Steiners are involved at some point. Bray Wyatt's in there. So I'd just love to know what the decision factor is. Is it a Hall of Fame thing, or is it just who's the hottest person to throw in later on in the year?
We take everything into account. We want to make sure that, because we know that the wrestling fan base, there's a lot of people who are historians, that just love the old school stuff. And then we have people who like, NXT or the more current product. And then some people like, the gimmicky stuff that we'll add, T last year, so, we try to have a good balance for everyone. And I feel like, these past two DLCs, we've done a pretty good job. Well, two games with our announcement this year have done a pretty good job of satisfying everyone. There's definitely, people that are missing that we would love to add as well. But sometimes, either we don't have a Legends deal with them and, or timing just doesn't work out if someone comes back on the roster and we've already locked down DLC, right? There's so many different factors that goes into these decisions. And we work hard with the WWE to make sure that we try to deliver, a roster that, will satisfy pretty much everyone.
I thought it's super impressive already this year, and it just shows how reactive the team are behind the game, that you've already got Sami Zayn's new t-shirt, within, I think it was a couple of weeks that he's only had that t-shirt and he's already on the game. And it's little things like that. You notice them and you go, wow, they really are listening and reacting to how the industry is shaping and changing as you go. And I felt that definitely last year in terms of a reaction to the game with, I'm a big MyGM guy. I love anything general manager. We've got footy manager over here in the UK, wrestling manager, I'm there. And it was something I love from all the old WWE games as well. So I loved how, I think there was a bit of reaction when the game first dropped and they were like, we'd love some more tag teams and maybe some mid-card titles down the line, things like that. And you guys have listened this year and straight away thrown those in. It's like, wow, great. I feel like whatever we throw into the mix, for something that can slightly heighten or enhance the game, be you're receptive and will listen and maybe add a few little sprinkles in and then throw some things that you didn't expect. I didn't expect Xavier Woods and Tyler Breeze to be optional general managers. I went straight for Woods. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's my guy. That's me. I'm going to be a SmackDown guy. But are there any other things, maybe as little cheeky little secrets and additional details you can let us know potentially further down the year? Are there any other things that you'd be looking to maybe bring in to GM as well on top of what we've already been spoiled with this year? Or is it just a case of we're quite happy with the way this one's looking, we'll see how this one plays out?
Usually that's Alan's realm, as he was the GM, that was his baby from, we were prototyping that thing, way early on, and I think right after 2K20 shipped, and it's just one of the things that we look at every year, can we add, X? Can, people really like this from the old game, or we have this idea, but a lot of the things that, we want to try usually comes down to time, right? And resources. And Alan, I know, last year you were super reactive, after we shipped and making sure that you were adding all that stuff.
The crazy thing is the tag titles is we kind of had that almost ready to go when we shipped, so that we were able to plop those things right in the week after. So fortunately, people saw that we were able to make those changes quickly. But I think with this year, we've added so much, with all the different GMs and then the seasons and the challenges. we're in a pretty good spot right now. Of course, there are things that we would like to add and change, but I think we want to, not be as reactive with putting new stuff in the game this year until we're going to make a bigger change to things coming next year. So we kind of want to see how things play out and see how people's reactions to the cool stuff that we added this year, like the trophies and the shakeups and all that cool stuff. So we're pretty happy with how it turned out. So
yeah, it definitely feels like a more well-rounded experience just in straight away. I feel a couple of seasons in, you're like, wow, I feel like there's been a real onus this year on keeping things fresh as you go. So there's real longevity to the game. You can keep playing for hours and hours and hours. You don't just complete one feature and go, right, I've done that mode, on to the next mode. You could really stick on all of them for as long as you want, which is great because the fun never stops. And that's what it's all about, isn't it, really? I'm not sure if I'm guessing you must have seen this at some point because social media has been crazy with this game this year. And we've all loved it as a wrestling channel, just seeing how the live wrestling world has reacted to ratings, because these are a big thing this year. And it's even been written into storylines, like on WWE television, how people are getting offended by, I've been underrated, I've been overrated. And I've never really seen it pop off in the way it has done this year. So kudos to whoever was behind the promotional push for that, because it's been great. But just out of like pure fun, bit of curiosity, who do you guys think necessarily was underrated or overrated? Like, if you could give us one each, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to pick sides, don't want to like start any beef with anybody. But me personally, I think one of the Usos was higher rated than the other Uso, and I was thinking, that's you're asking for trouble now, guys. Like, I don't know who was behind that one, but you're just asking for real world drama.
Yeah, Bret Hart's not a 99. He's underrated. That's pretty simple.
No one's going to argue over here with that one. Trust me.
Yeah.
Bret Hart fans everywhere.
Yeah. Now, it's really tough. Like every year, we try to do our best to rate, the WWE superstars according to like what's happening on television. And some people are upset this year, and I get that. But at the same time, I love the fact that they care. Like to me, we've been making this game for a while now, and no one ever said anything, hardly ever, right? And it was just like, oh, okay. But then you would see, with NBA 2K, like the NBA players caring about their ratings. You would see it with NFL and Madden, and it just felt like we just weren't hitting on that level. And finally, it just feels like they're taking notice and they actually care how they're being reflected in the game, even with MVP suit in my ride. So brilliant. It's just so I love the fact that they care. And to me, it's a conversation starter, and I think we have to evaluate the way that we do to make sure that we are accurate and hopefully no one's going to come after us for making the decisions that we make. But I still feel like we do a pretty good job of representing what we believe is fair on our scale based on programming.
Yeah,
that's one of those. I was gonna say, this is one of those things that it's based on programming. It's based on the stats engine that drives a lot of gameplay as far as all of the attributes that make up a rating. There's a lot of things that go into choosing a rating, and there's also just the desire that you want to have character differentiation across the roster. You want to feel like you can see the difference between the characters who are way up at the top in the main event scene and people who are relative newcomers or haven't hit that stride yet. And so striking that balance is a really big challenge. It's something we look at every year to refine our process. But then on the other hand, having control in the player's hands is also a really important thing. And so the fact that we let you customize all of those things is it's really important to me to make sure that people can kind of fine tune the roster how they want it, and then incorporate their created characters as well, how they fit into that pantheon.
Yeah, and speaking of, while we're on like the creation kind of like cloud of this right now, a big thing I feel like that's been a real step up since last year, especially, is just entrances in general. I think the entrances are outstanding. They're so simple. Like if you've got a 4K television set up or something, it's just, you feel like you're watching something better than the actual real life product. It's fascinating. So that's again just like an off the cuff thing. What entrances were you particularly proud of this year? Because we've seen the Cody one, that was quite awesome. Like we love a bit of Cody with the smoke and the pitch black. It's awesome. But yeah, any others that really stand out and you think, yeah, that's we're quite proud of that one this year.
For me, it honestly, it's not the like any particular entrance. It's what you can do with them now. Like with the re-edition of Creative Entrance Advance, right? Where I can mix, like you're saying, like Cody's elevator scene with, Shotzi coming out in the tank, and then all of a sudden switching to, Undertaker on a motorcycle, right? Like all of those things, and just giving people the freedom to like create the most either bonkers thing ever, or trying to match to someone who's not in the WWE anymore or in a different federation, like, trying to recreate them as close as possible. Like just allowing that freedom for the community to have that's to me, like, I love seeing that. Like when I go on YouTube and look at like, here are the top, creative superstars that you got to download today. And it was just like, oh my God, the stuff that they're creating is incredible.
Yeah. The care and attention is frightening. For again, like you say, you just flick onto Twitter and you see like your top 10s, and it's stuff like generations. Like you get a lot of nostalgia. Somebody's like, oh, here's Batista from 2007. You're like, oh, that's my youth, it's my childhood. But again, it's another massive USP of the game, because you're like, you can live through whatever generation you want to. Really, you just got to click the right buttons and find the right people who are uploading these incredible creative wrestlers there for you to get. But speaking of like having that freedom to just create whatever story you want to create, really, within this entire mad WWE universe. We've got the My Rise thing, which I got lost in a little bit last year. I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of hours on My Rise. I adored it, but I really love this because I came back onto it this year and thought, okay, well, I've done My Rise last year, but what more could they do, really? It was awesome last year. And then the way it kicks off, like kind of veering away from, if I went down the lock. I know there's the legacy on the lock. I went for the lock. I was feeling cocky. I was like, yeah, I'm the certain guy. Let's go for this one. And I loved it. It was great. I love I hope I'm not spoiling things too much. We'll cut everything out of it. I'm spoiling things, but I love the documentary footage, the way of kind of incorporating that, keeping it so that's how the story's being told. It's not just a case of we're in NXT and we're just going through the kind of, I was going to say prototypical. You've got me now. You got me going for it as well. But the prototypical WWE Universe like superstar mode. We didn't go that way this time, and I loved it for that particular route anyway. And just a few things on My Rise, but what was the inspiration behind The Lock in general? Was it just a case of somebody said, oh, The Rock's doing some cool things, and somebody said The Lock, and then they went into it that way, like they kind of dig out in the story itself? Or was there more to it? Was it just kind of looking at what's going on in the real world and just thinking, right, can we incorporate that and add something fresh to it?
Yeah, we wanted to do something fresh. And so we have two writers, Sean and Andrea. So Sean's in charge of writing the Lock story, and Andrea's in charge of writing the legacy. And, they wanted to try something different, but at the same time that paid homage to either what's going on in WWE or like with the legacy. It's like, oh, let's incorporate like, this historic aspect to it with, your aunt and Molly Holly. And, so it's just like there's a nod to the old school as well. So they had two totally different approaches. And I love the fact that they're taking that approach, because it's no longer just like, oh, play the men's storyline or play the women's storyline. Play these two different series that touch on different aspects of wrestling. And with the Lock, I would say it's very similar. If you think about it, it's very similar to Drew McIntyre's climb, right, where he was deemed the chosen one and struggled and left, and then there's the comeback story, right? And with the legacy, it's more about like trying to, like, you look at like a second generation wrestler, like the shoes that they have to feel and the pressure that's put on them. That's a story right there where I think a lot of people in our WWE roster right now will probably, have experience with. So I felt like they did a really good job of telling those stories in a very accurate manner. But also it's entertaining and fun to play.
That's it. It definitely, again, you feel like you've got all these different routes that you can go off. You can go straight down that main story arc if you just want to. I know some people who just like streamlining and going straight for the throat and go, yeah, we're going to finish this main story. But then you can have so many offshoots. And again, it just keeps it fresh, keeps it moving. Every time you come back to it, you can do something different, which is awesome. And speaking of doing something different this year, which I adored as well, I thought it was a really cool choice just in general, was the showcase with Cena. I love, and it's just feels like a massive reflection of the dude, to be honest, because he seems like somebody who's quite happy to poke fun at himself, be the butt of the joke a little bit. And with this, is this is me how I failed. Like this is how I've had to overcome these big failures in my life. And the fact you get to wrestle a Super Cena, let's be honest, I've had my ass whooped a lot in this game by this Super Cena. He's been upsetting me. I had my nephew sat next to me the other day and said, "Oh, I'll show you this WWE 2K game." Like, yeah, cool. I said, "That's John. I know John Cena from Bumblebee." That was their reaction. And I was getting battered, absolutely battered. And they were like, "You're not very good at this game." And I was like, "No, it's John Cena. All right, he never gives up. It's quite a thing." So particularly, I just want to know what was the thought process behind those particular losses? Because there's a lot of losses that you could choose. Not that many losses because he's pretty unbeatable. But you got things that I adored, the Edge cash-in, stuff like that. I know it's a bit more of a flash in the pan kind of loss, but he's had a couple of high-profile ones over his career. So what was the thinking behind those particular specific losses?
Yeah, so I don't know if this comes out as well as I'd hoped it had in the mode, but the idea with Showcase is that we're doing it's like an unofficial countdown. So we're not going to have every single loss. That's just not going to happen. And I know we've seen on Twitter now, like people are calling out, like, where's Kevin Owens from Elimination Chamber? Where's Seth Rollins from SummerSlam? I think it's just one of those things that, to me, I wanted these losses to be, it's not just that John Cena lost. It's that, like you look at Rob Van Dam at ECW. Rob Van Dam got one win over him, but that's like such a gigantic match, gigantic event. That win was huge. It starts ECW back up. They merged the two titles together. Like, there's a lot that happened from that. Whereas, like, that Kevin Owens loss was cool in the moment, but then Cena turned right around and beat him again. There's not really much that he had to lose or learn from that. So I tried to go with the biggest names so that we could, it's shining that light on Cena and Ruthless Aggression at the same time. So I wanted the biggest dudes from that era. And it's not just, not someone that's just cool, if you will, but like some bigger stars in this game. And so you get your Triple H, you get your Batista. These are big rivals of his. These are huge losses of his that he really had to come back from. I like that Triple H match personally, where it's Night of Champions 2008 might not be that event that everyone remembers as their all-time favorite, but that story of, I had this dude, I thought I had him at WrestleMania 22. John Cena beats Triple H. He gets a year and a half to kind of sit there and think about it. So now that win is a big one for him. That's like, Triple H was embarrassed at WrestleMania. So now he gets to return the favor at Night of Champions. Batista, Randy Orton, Edge, like 1,000 matches between them. How do you possibly pick one? So I went with, I liked that Hell in a Cell match with Orton because to me, that's prime Viper. We could have done TLC where the World Heavyweight Championship. There's SummerSlam 2007. There's, like I said, a million.
Kudos to that model, by the way. And you've probably seen the praise you're getting for that, because that is some frightening work you've got there. That is brilliant. The Apex Orton right there.
And that's what we want from Showcase, is that if we're not going to have, John Cena's lucky because we have 13 versions of him in this mode. But when you get someone like Randy Orton, Batista, you don't want to just make it an alt. You want some prime version of them. And so to me, we have long hair, current Randy Orton. We need the Viper back. We need that guy that's just, he's got the IED. He's ready to snap. We brought him back. That's the beauty of Showcase to me, is just making sure that we capture moments, eras, looks, all of that. The ones that you remember the most is what we should be shining that light on.
Yeah, it definitely felt that way. And it was lovely having Cena there, like talking through things as well, just giving you a few little nuggets behind the scenes information, just to it makes it rewarding. It's a real rewarding mode to play through just in general. So that's a personal favorite. Again, I've had a lot of favorites in this game. I've really enjoyed my playing through it currently. But another thing I've seen as well, just a little feature, I've seen a change in the pinning system. And that was obviously last year. Yeah, it's still in this game, obviously, but you had the tapping out of it. I think it was tapping A or tapping X just to break out the kick out. Now it's more of a mini game where you have to time fingers and toggle upwards. With that, was that more of a case of, okay, we just want to add something different, just give people options? Or was it a way of maybe making the game a bit more accessible for people who just don't want to button bash, or just in general having something there that can be easy to pick up for a new player? Because it does feel like that with this game. It does seem like something where you don't have to have played any of the other 2K games. You can just pick it up if you are a new player, and you can after a couple of tutorials, you can have all the time, like all the fun in the world doing whatever you want. But if you are an experienced 2K player, there's a few little additions where you go, actually, no, it's going to enhance the way I play this game. And I felt like that with the pinning system. So I want to know if that was an active way of thinking, or was it just we're throwing an alternative?
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that, because it was all of those things. And I'd say the story of 2K22 is similar, right? We used to have the timing mini game as the kickout mini game, which I think did a really good job of capturing the drama of a really late kickout. But it had a lot of accessibility issues, right? Like, not in the sense of necessarily physical accessibility, but just like what someone expects when they're playing a wrestling game. People want to button mash to get up. And so 22 bring back a button mash pin escape mini game. A lot of people were like, thank God, finally we have a button mash escape. But then there's that aspect of like, it doesn't necessarily capture exactly the things that I like about it. And there's the physical accessibility questions for a button mash mini game. So this year, being able to give the kind of update to the time mini game, increase the I think the intrigue of it by having both of the indicator and the meter moving back and forth, which gave us, I think, some more difficulty tunings. You can really make those difficult pins feel extremely hard to kick out of. Whereas in the old timing mini game, once you've learned it, some people could just reliably kick out of any finisher at any point. So I think we've kind of increased the ceiling of difficulty on the mini game that way. And then finally, you kind of have these two core ways of kicking out that for some people, one is completely natural and the other is completely foreign, and vice versa. We recognize there are a lot of different players for this game who want different things from it. And I think pin being such a core mechanic, it was really important to us to kind of address both sides of the audience.
It definitely shows. And just as a bit of fun, really, just to kind of close things out, I'd just love to know, are there any other little tidbits that are going to be on the way in my faction? And I think you probably know necessarily what I'm talking about, because I've been looking all over Twitter recently, and I noticed, and I thought it was some kind of glitch at first, or somebody made one hell of a mod and just thrown it in there. But I've seen somebody post something about an action figure John Cena. Okay. And my head fell off. Clean off. It was rolling down the street. And I don't know if this was just like an incredible thing that somebody just thought up and went, oh, yeah, we'll do that. And apparently you have to scan a toy, and you get that through my faction. And I know you want to play those cards very close to your chest, and I respect you all greatly for that. But are there any other little tidbits? Can we expect any more surprises that could tumble out of my faction, or any other mode that hasn't been found yet? And maybe you could give people a few clues of where to look, what to do necessarily to unlock a few of the many great features that are available in this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to me, my faction is the place where we can catch people by surprise, right? And in the same way that we tried with, I would say, originals in 2K20, just like, just offering, just something unexpected. I think where we missed the boat on that one is that people still wanted the traditional DLC model, right? Where it's like, oh, if Bobby Lashley's coming back, why isn't he in the DLC? I'm getting, Bray Wyatt Swamp Thing instead, right? And so, we have our traditional DLC model still in place. For my faction, we can play around with just different things and offer a different experience. And a lot of the driving factor there was just seeing what NBA was doing, right? Where it's just like they'll have like these cards that they look, like they're like a comic book character or whatever, right? It's just over the top. And I'm like, we're a wrestling game. Like, not only could we make a card that looks like that, we can make a model that looks like that card, right? The style of that card, and let's try things, right? And I think, luckily we have a live ops team that can be reactive and just try things while we're off working on matches in WWE 2K24, right? So it's just like, it's kind of the sky's the limit for whatever we can do there. And I'm super excited to see what, we come up with.
I think that's a great note to end things on, because my faction, it's definitely one of those modes that's going to be unpacked more and more over the next year. So it's going to be great. I can't wait. I'm just going to sit back and watch the madness unfold on Twitter, on YouTube, and I'm sure you guys are as well. And I bet you're all incredibly proud. So thank you very much. Thank you for all sitting there and having a chat with us today. Hopefully these clips will pop up on our channel very soon and just put more of a spotlight on this game, because you've made something special, and it feels like it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gareth. It was awesome talking to you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.